Currently, I am a lecturer in adult nursing at Northumbria University. However, up until quite recently, I was working within a local trust as a research nurse and midwife. I've always been quite interested in academia, I've always been quite academic, and I felt that I was ready to make a move away from clinical practice, but not to be too far removed. And a research post came up, and so I applied for it. And that was about the time that they were setting up the comprehensive research networks. The trust that I worked for had a whole department dedicated just to research, and each specialism had its own research team, which comprised largely of research nurses, or in my case, midwives. So that's how I made the move into research. I worked within the reproductive health and childbirth team for around about 2 years, before taking a secondment within the regional research network. That gave me some real insight into the more commercial side of research. So I was working as an industry manager, working with commercial companies, big pharmaceutical and medtech companies, in collaborating to set up research within NHS organisations in the region. So that was a fantastic experience. I did that as half of my role, and the other half of my role I worked as an actual midwife researcher, and I was coordinating the qualitative component of a large HTA funded trial looking at a specific genetic test. And it was my role to go out and speak to healthcare professionals, commissioners, parents, and the women who were ultimately going to be benefiting from this trial. I was at both ends of the spectrum, both working very much at the coalface, delivering commercial studies, while also working as an academic researcher. And the idea of that secondment was really to help me to see which direction I ultimately wanted to take, so it was a great opportunity. No specific additional qualifications are required to get into being a research nurse. However, the opportunities are there once you are a research nurse to undertake additional training. You do have to have good clinical practice. That's a prerequisite before you can actually approach participants and be named as a nurse on the delegation log for clinical trials or for any research. Additionally, once you're working in research, there are opportunities to further yourself academically. I feel that I have a lot to bring to the role in terms of previous clinical experience. That was certainly very important. Knowledge of the specialism when I first started out. It's about the interpersonal, it's about the relationships, the collaborations with clinical staff, with research staff, with staff from other sites who might be leading the research, the chief investigators, the principal investigators. The nurse is very much at the centre of all this, drawing and coordinating, bringing everybody in and making sure ultimately that the participants in research are safeguarded. Often when principal investigators are first thinking about a trial, they will send the research proposal or the research protocol to the team. Certainly as the team lead and as a senior research nurse, that was something I would do quite frequently. I would review the protocol, particularly the recruitment strategy, because often the nurses on the ground have a much better idea of the numbers, of the kind of patients that they're getting through particular clinics, and they'll get a much better feel for whether or not some of the things that are being proposed would be acceptable to patients. Now I'm a lecturer in adult nursing for undergraduates. Research is very much interweaved and embedded within everything that we teach, because it is so fundamental to everything we do as practitioners in terms of the development of the evidence by which we practice. And they're very much the principles that we try and instill in the students from the very beginning, so that when they become qualified nurses, they're already familiar with research terms, they're already familiar and comfortable and confident with reading research and understanding how to critique it and understanding the implications that evidence has on their own practice. The thing that has always appealed to me about research is that you're right on the cutting edge. It's all about what's going to be happening in standard clinical care in the next 2, 5, 10 years, and that's quite an exciting place to be. Anybody who is wishing to think about a career in research, that they absolutely should consider it. It's a very positive move. It's a good role to do in terms of work-life balance. It's not as physically demanding perhaps as what a clinical role might be, and there is so much variation to the role. You're out and about regionally, potentially going to different meetings, getting involved with what's happening on the national coalface as well. So it's a real good opportunity for developing your nursing career for anybody who is either at the start of their career or even towards the end and who are looking for something different to do. They've got so much experience to bring, and they're the kind of people that we would also really like to see embrace research nursing.